Well, welcome to another video, and I should be working on Land Rovers again because we're going to need them. My apprentice has another complaint about her switch. So previously she had thrown her switch across the room and busted the stick off here. She purchased new sticks with her pocket money and we replaced them. Now apparently the X button doesn't work, and I have an idea as to why that might be. I've noticed the brand new $17 screen protector we just purchased, I've only now noticed has another crack in it. That was only like 3 days ago. She goes through those things like lightning. I may start cutting acrylic ones for it, I think. Any case, what we do need to do is open this up again. Doing this up, one of the custom little tri-wing screws cammed out, and I had to use a different screwdriver to get it out. Included in the kit is this reasonable quality tri-wing special little screwdriver to get those proprietary screws out, of which there are 4 there. And they did give us a few extra of those tri-wing screws, so I will probably need one. I'll put some significant downforce on this screw so that it doesn't cam out. I did also oil the little hinge bit in here. Makes this considerably easier to use. This one I already had started. And this one here. So we can pull them out, put them on a different magnet. These ones are barely magnetic at all, so I do need to be careful with that cloth. I see what I've done here. I've put one of the tri-wing screws on the top here instead of one of the Phillips. We'll probably want to take the game card out, which is Animal Crossing, and we probably want to shut this down as well. Let's hold on, power options, power off. Let that shut down. Then after it shuts down, we will remove SD card as well, just to avoid it getting snapped or something silly. We'll pop that in there. Should probably find my tweezers. Alright, we'll stick those to a side and find our spudger. Alright, time for the spudger. Tinkerman Mick got me started on this particular style of spudger. I think the speaker ports allow us to pry up if you're gentle, and you just work along gently and lever that way out just a tiny bit. Should start to release the snap clips without snapping the snap clips, because snapping snap clips snap stuff, and snapping stuff is not good. And I think we just lever out just the tiniest bit. This will start to release. This can take a couple of minutes. Yep, there we go. I saw that crack open up there. Okay, fortunately I have learned that there is nothing attached to the back panel, like cables or ribbons or anything like that, which is actually a nice thing to see with something like this. All too often there's an extra couple little wires or a ribbon cable that busts off when you peel the back off. So repairability, I think, must have been some part of a consideration here. Alright, I think we can get that one out. There we go. Oakley dokley. Now, need to remove that, remove this entire heat shield, all these little screws, all the ribbon cables on the board, including this little one, and peel that motherboard out again. Alright, heat shield is off, and we marked the length of the screws in long and short there. 3 screws on that. Now we need to, in fact I will use a plastic tool for this so I don't damage things. So we need to start undoing ribbon connectors. Namely this one, and I need a good pair of tweezers. Probably the set of tweezers that came with the kit. We're going to pull that one out. I did learn a valuable lesson about these little connectors. We can probably zoom in on one of them. For years, when I've encountered this particular type of clip, even though I'm aware of these cam lock connectors, I hadn't understood that you need to lift the back up of these so that you can pull the ribbon cable out. And I'd been forcing them in and out, and surprisingly enough, never actually damaged one of the cables. I consider myself extremely lucky. Okay, we've got a few more ribbon cables, some stuff to come under. The heat sink's got to come off. which is where fresh heatsink compound comes into play. We bought a brand new tube of this. So we are going to continue to pull heatsink off, which is these 3 screws here, and more ribbon cables, and also the game cartridge slot and headphone port. Now, when I first opened this heatsink did get a slight upward bend in it, which so far has not been a problem, but also all the heatsink compound was super dried up, so I sort of smooshed it around a bit with some alcohol and tried to clean it up as best I could and reseat it, but I didn't have any spare stuff. This, I'm hoping, is not a thermal pad here. It does sort of look like a really thin one, and I think it's supposed to touch onto these little power regulators down here, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We'll clean that up. 3 short screws out of there. I'm marking that because this is unlikely to be the only time I have to be in here. My Apprentice, also known as my child, is notoriously hard on things, as is evidenced by the crack in the brand new screen protector on the front. Now, the game cartridge port and the headphone socket need to come out together because they are on the same little connector here, and that also covers up access to everything else, so that can go off to one side for a moment. Now, this is the digitizer connection. This is the display connector here. Well, last time I opened this was misaligned by about 0.5 millimeter, and the entire display didn't work. And I had to disassemble everything all over again just for that one connector. So we will pop this up as well. This one often doesn't want to play ball. There we go. Now very carefully slide under this. A little bit of tension as gently as we can. Okay. I've seen some guys on YouTube work on these because I did do my homework. And I did reference the last bloke I did homework on in the video. They get a bit haphazard, I guess. They're experienced with the right amount of force. I have multiple sclerosis, so fine stuff like this. While I am an experienced hearing aid technician, the fine dexterity is not something I'm good at anymore. So I used to work in a stereoscopic microscope. Get our antennas off here. There we go. So we've got antenna connectors. This ribbon here goes over to the other side. If that ribbon's not seated properly, most functions don't work. Got our other ribbons off. I think we're pretty good. The speaker can come up in a minute. The speaker does not need to be unplugged. The shoulder button will come off. What we're going to do now, before we get much further, is lift the power connector off here, hopefully without shorting anything. That's our power connector off. Make sure we don't damage the power buttons there. Now we have a bunch more screws to come out of here. Hopefully we don't lose them. 2 screws out of the shoulder button. It lifts away. Now, how the D-pad is done is how these are done. They have a little carbonized rubber pad, pretty much like a remote control, and they contact the motherboard. Quite a reliable way of making a switch if you can do it right. Right, we should have most of the motherboard screws out, including the 2 on the data port down here, or the charge port, whatever you want to call it, USB-C port. This should free the motherboard up. We can lift gently here. Feels like it is snagging on something. We need to just be a little mindful of that and lift away gently. Is there a ribbon cable we have forgotten? There is one. That's why we don't rip away firmly. This one here. Hope I don't bugger the cable up doing this. There we go. That one is up. Not sure what that one's for. Somebody will correct me, I'm sure. Yeah. There's our motherboard off. Okay. Now we're up this way. Here's our carbon rubber pad. And you can see here it isn't strictly aligned properly. It's slightly cockeyed. And these pads are where your main buttons are. This would be X button up the top here. So I think probably what's happened is this has just not been seated correctly. And I can see there are 2 vertical bumps. There isn't an orientation per se, except for these 2 bits in the middle. But I think I meant to orient it in that position. And that would make sense. That would stop it rotating out of place. So if I've done that right, that's all we really need to do is seat that back down. But I might just get a Q-tip and a little bit of alcohol. Yeah. I've sprayed a little bit of isopropyl alcohol onto a Q-tip. Just going to give it just a gentle clean. You don't want to do too much on these rubber pads because it can distort them. Alright, we'll do that. What we're going to do here as well is, just in case, give these a little clean. Normally I'd use circuit board cleaner. I think IPA is going to be fine. Alright, I'll let that dry off nice and quick. Now we're going to flip our board over and we're going to place it back on, being careful to align all these ribbon cables where they need to go. And this is one of the trickiest parts of this whole process. That one for the controller stick down there, I can get after the fact. This ribbon cable up the corner here, let's change our zoom up a bit. The ribbon cable here is probably the most difficult one. These 2 you have to be mindful of and not bend too much. Okay, speaker can go back in that slot. Line up. If we're right, we can hook this guy and pull him back up. There we go. Okay, now we start putting screws back in. Most of these were short and there's a half a dozen of them, so we'll get back into it. Alright, so while I've been doing this, I got paid by YouTube. That's nice. One little tip I'm going to offer here is, with this particular unit, or the headphone socket and the cartridge slot, put the ribbon cable in first before you screw them in. It's 100 times easier to get that in. That's something I've figured out in the process of doing this. And these should just lay down there like that. There are 3 short screws here and 4 short screws there. These short screws are quite short, as the name might imply, like that short. They go in here. One thing I would also recommend if you're doing this is to get yourself one of these little magnetizer, demagnetizer things. Very handy. Now, you know how I said you have to be careful not trapping all the leads under it? Well, I trapped the Wi-Fi leads under the motherboard. I've got to undo most of what I've just done. Lucky, I was able to undo these 2 screws here and just gently lift the board up and fish them out with the pliers. Don't like bending those little tiny coax cables too much. It does tend to mess up the signal loss a little bit. Although nothing my apprentice won't do next time she gets hold of this, I'm sure. Okay, we are assembled enough that we can test run. Now I need to work out which one of these buttons is volume up, volume down, and power. I believe the endmost button here is power. And there we go. Okay, so good news, we have screen. Let's go to wide angle. We'll wait for that to boot up, and then we'll check our controls, and hopefully they work. So, we have a digitizer, that's good. Do we have, could insert a game card, that's alright. I need to find a function on here that relies on the X button to work. Apparently we have a test button. We'll turn off our overhead lights here. Apparently we have test controller buttons as an option. Okay, so X button works. A, B works. That works. Plus button. Minus button. Left, right, up, down. Whatever that button is. The capture button works. Home button. Okay, now we've got to go back. So we go settings. We go all the way down here, controllers and sensors. Then we go test input devices, test controller buttons, and actually I think we tested all shoulder buttons. Right, left. Cool, they're all working. That's good. Okay, so I think we've had a win. Alright, so now we need to take these 3 screws out, lift the heatsink out, clean up the dies and all of that stuff, put some fresh heatsink compound on. Alright, for this die, I'm going to use a tissue to get the bulk of it to start with. Saves gumming up all my tools with stuff. And because I've previously treated this with alcohol, this is coming off pretty easy. Beforehand, it was a very dry, chunky mess. I've got to clean up the back of this heatsink here. I'll do the same thing to that. Be gentle, it's very easy to bend. For some of the more stubborn stuff, we're going to use some contact cleaner here. There's this red stuff that was chunked away in like just a big block of the stuff that flaked off when we first opened it up. Yeah, this gets it much cleaner. Just got to be careful of that tissue getting in the way. So now we're going to move to just a gentle abrasion with spudger. See if we can scrub some of that off. A little bit more contact cleaner. This can be tedious. We'll be back. Now, where some of that brown stuff I think came from was dried on the back of the heat shield as well, which clearly, or this might be RF shield, but I think it's working as part of the cooling solution as well. Either way, we'll apply a little bit on both sides. Now, we need a very small amount of this stuff. If I can get this open, there we go. It's just a little cork. Squeegee just a little tiny bit of this on here. Where are we? I should test over here in case it squirts a whole bunch out like that. Okay. That is probably going to be loads. Now we'll use this tool because I have a heap of them. We're going to just spread this around a bit. If we feel like we need a little bit more, we will add some, but less is more in some cases with this. We'll work this around a bit. We'll be back. Okay, the conclusion I've come to here is this little black bit here, and yes, I have applied just a tiny bit to both sides. A tiny bit goes a really long way. I think this is just to stop short circuits on there. So we're going to drop you back on here gently. I'm going to give it just a little wriggle just to seat that paste in, help it disperse out. Just a very, very gentle wriggle. We're going to add 3 screws back in now. Now, at this point, if you haven't already worked out, I'm not an expert on Nintendo Switches. This is not what I do for a living. This is just my own child's Switch that needs fixing, and I don't like seeing my child heartbroken. And I have a relative amount of skill that allows me to do some of these sort of things. I do many different things, and I don't necessarily do all of them perfectly. So, as you can probably tell from that little shakiness, my multiple sclerosis is affecting my fine motor skills pretty badly right now. So I am having to use some different techniques to get these things in. Going to what I've seen when I opened this, a little strip along the back of this heat pipe here won't go astray. And that is a massive strip, way more than I'd hoped to put on there. But I think when we contact this, it's going to squish on the back of that, no worries. Or no wuckers, I guess, as you could call in slang. That sounds like my apprentice tripping the automated doorbell outside. That's that knocking sound. We have an infrared perimeter beam. That means she's back from her learning institution, so we will need to get this done shortly. So my apprentice come flying in the door, and the first thing she wanted to know was, have I done the repair yet? And I said, I've done some repairs, but I'm not sure if it worked yet or not. So we're almost done, and see if we can put the lid on. Alright, so we've got a few more things to do, or a few more screws. Take our special screwdriver here with our cam lobes. That looks like a bit of a messed up screw. We'll take our special little tri-wing ones, we'll do those 4 first, and we'll do the rest. Alright, now that we've put everything back together, we'll turn off our overhead light so we're not looking at the reflection. Go to the test mode. Go to controllers and sensors, all the way down to test input devices, test controller buttons.
They're all testing.
Okay.
It works!
Okay, so A, B, Y, X. X works. Plus, minus. No, that doesn't work there. Do the... hang on. That's all right, we'll go back again. We can do that. There are a couple of buttons I forgot to test. That one, the buttons under there, yep. Okay. They all work. Yep. Okay, that all works.
Except
Now what we can do is we can test the touch screen now. And we can test. Okay. Up here. That looks pretty good. Yeah, I think we're good. I don't think we've messed anything up. I think we had a good ending on this.
let's go.
Okay, so I guess you can have it back now.
Finally.
All right, that's the end of that repair. Have it back, Apprentice. Go have some fun.